Let's just cut to the chase. 2021 won't be going down in history as a landmark year in gaming. Of course, there was plenty of quality stuff to play, there always is, but as I get older, I get harder and harder to impress, I play less and less new titles, and overall, when I think back on the year, I'm left with a pretty lukewarm feeling. Because of that, in part, I've decided to change up my Game of the Year video this time around. Instead of struggling to fill out my usual top 10, I've narrowed down my personal favorites to a much more manageable 5, while using the remaining slots to highlight 5 other titles that I found disappointing. Now, disappointing doesn't usually mean bad, and I know with certainty that people will take issue with a few of my picks. It just means the particular games I've chosen didn't live up to my personal expectations for one reason or another. Usual rules apply for the best games. I had to have played it myself. Early access games don't count. I'm so sorry, Valheim, I want to put you on this list. And neither do re-releases or remasters, although remakes are allowed. For the disappointing picks, though, I'm gonna be much more lax. If it came out in 2021 and I played it, it counts. End of story. This video is already late enough as it is, so let's jump right into my top 5 disappointing and top 5 best games of 2021. "12 Minutes intrigued me when I first heard about it all the way back in 2015. Having to solve a mystery while stuck in a tiny apartment repeating the same brief time loop over and over is inherently interesting. But unfortunately, the execution doesn't live up to the premise. It starts out well enough, and the all-star cast of James McAvoy, Daisy Ridley, and Willem Dafoe do a great job selling their dialogue, but it doesn't take long before you hit a wall. Trial and error in a game with this premise is sort of a given, but instead of naturally finding all the puzzle pieces and putting them together in a satisfying way, 12 Minutes becomes a frustrating pixel hunt as you click on every possible item, combining them with every other possible item, trying to figure out the one thing the developers intend for you to do. You'll think of multiple logical ways our characters could overcome a particular obstacle, but since none of them follow the pre-approved script, you'll fail again and again and again. After bashing my head against this thing for 2 hours, I threw my hands up and consulted a guide. And when I did, I wasn't left thinking, oh, how could I have missed that? I thought, how in the hell is anyone supposed to assume that's the solution? Add to that a plot that wraps up with an anticlimactic series of twists, and 12 Minutes ultimately left me feeling like I had wasted my time. It's no secret that I enjoy me some Hitman shenanigans, so it probably won't surprise anyone to see the latest 47 killathon on my best list. Hitman 3 doesn't reinvent the winning formula that IO Interactive has down to a science at this point, but it didn't need to. The conclusion to the Providence trilogy does its job of giving us more gorgeous levels to explore and tons of creative kill opportunities to execute. It had a very rocky launch. IO needs to ditch their current insistence on always online, and from what I heard, the post-launch DLC wasn't really worth it. But despite the issues, I had such a great time exhaustively finding every possible way to unalive my targets. That said, I do hope the series is given a nice long break while the studio works on other projects, and that whenever we see Mr. 47 return, he'll have a bunch of new tools in his suitcase to shake things up. Because if not, the formula, no matter how good, will start to feel stale. Left 4 Dead 2 is awesome. You know that, I know that, it's just a matter of fact. You know what's not awesome? Back 4 Blood. When this got announced, I was skeptical. I knew there was no way it could live up to the masterpiece that inspired it. All I expected was some fun, zombie-killing action to entertain me for a while, and somehow it failed to do even that. Back 4 Blood makes a very good first impression with its solid core mechanics, but it didn't take long for the horrible balance to ruin all of the fun. Depending on difficulty, the game is either a boring slog that players can sleepwalk through, or a relentless gauntlet of special infected spam with no healthy middle ground. A convoluted card system acts as a mediocre substitute for the AI director, Warner Bros. Publishing means no mod support to speak of, and underwhelming versus multiplayer that everyone already seems to have forgotten about only make Back 4 Blood even less appealing. I've read that recent patches have fixed, or at least mellowed, the aforementioned difficulty issues, but for me, it's too little too late. We already have an amazing game about blasting undead hordes to play, with none of the issues I just mentioned, which is still thriving 13 years later. So if you need to run and gun to a safe room with other heavily armed survivors, just go back to Left 4 Dead. You ever been watching a Pixar movie and thought, hey, I'd like to play that? Well then, Kena Bridge of Spirits is the game for you. It's hard to look at Kena with all its AAA shine and remember it's technically a $40 indie game. A beautiful and charming adventure, its platforming, Pikmin-inspired puzzle solving, and combat are all simple in design, but enjoyable to engage with, and it handles themes of death, grief, and acceptance with a level of tact that will definitely speak to some people on an emotional level. Not me, of course. I'm a soulless husk. The only major issues I have with this Spirit journey are the unremarkable voice acting, especially from our lead, and boss fights that are shockingly hard compared to the general easygoing nature the rest of the game has. They aren't the hardest bosses ever made or anything, but they contribute to jarring difficulty spikes that throw off the otherwise solid pacing. I highly recommend picking up the staff, recruiting some rot, and helping the restless dead find peace. It's definitely a bridge worth crossing. Including this on the disappointing list is gonna get me some pushback, because Halo Infinite is actually pretty good. Whether you're taking on the Banished in campaign or other Spartans online, Infinite has some of the best first-person shooter combat I've played in the last few years. It's so polished, so gratifying. Whichever developer suggested the grapple hook should get a lifetime of raises, there is so much this game gets right. But there's also plenty holding it back. In single player, the open world is alright, but doesn't really justify its existence. The linear missions mostly consist of copy-paste Forerunner hallways, and the story spends half its runtime attempting to fix the disaster that was Halo 5's narrative, while the other half sets up a new threat that's left dangling for a sequel or follow-up DLC. On the multiplayer side of things, the launch had very little actual content to speak of, with only a handful of maps and modes, tied to progression and monetization systems designed to stretch out the grind so the impatient would reach for their wallets. And once the honeymoon period was over, everyone really started to notice. 343 has made efforts to address these talking points, making adjustments to challenges and XP rates to speed things up, and have recently patched in fan-requested playlists like Slayer. But can we all take a moment to highlight how ridiculous it is that Slayer had to be patched in after the fact? Like, what? I'm sure that in a year or so, this game will be feature-rich, more complete, but I'm so tired of saying that. I'm tired of games launching unfinished. I'm tired of players having to sit on their hands waiting for months of patches and updates. The core gameplay is excellent, but we should expect the total package when something comes out, especially when it's asking for money from multiple angles. Halo Infinite is the best game 343 has made, hands down. I just wish their accomplishment wasn't weighed down by these avoidable problems.
A lot of our stuff is unlocked through playing the game, and only through playing the game. Only through playing the game. Only through playing the game. Only through playing the game.
Agent 47 gets all the love, but what about the galactic space adventures of Diana Burnwood? Because, this is the same actress. Jokes aside, Returnal is one hell of a game. A bullet hell... Okay, I'll stop. Definitely the superior Deathloop game this year, Returnal is a visually stunning third-person shooter bullet hell roguelike mishmash that coalesces into an intensely fun whole. Fluid movement complements the pitch-perfect controls, which are both needed to avoid the barrages of projectiles sent your way as you blast alien creatures with punchy firearms. I didn't expect this game to be as fast or twitchy as it is, but once you get going, it's hard to put the controller down. Levels do quickly blend together since the procedural generation pulls from a pretty limited tile set. The roguelike elements are on the simplistic side, leading to similar builds for many runs, and said runs tend to last a while since there's no incentive to rush. But the core cycle of Returnal is consistently engaging, and each milestone hurdle overcame is more satisfying than the last. It'll kick your ass if you're not paying attention. but if you're willing to learn its systems and avoid blinking for extended periods of time, Returnal can easily wrap its tentacles around you and never let go. Every year, there's usually one game everyone sings the praises of and showers with high review scores, only for me to play it myself and come away feeling like a crazy person that doesn't understand what everyone else sees. In 2021, that game was Resident Evil Village. I don't think I've ever felt so lukewarm on a mainline Resident Evil, not hating my time with it, but also not really loving it either. Village comes off as a title torn between identities, borrowing or even outright copying concepts from previous entries, only for each and every one to come across as a pale imitation that never comes close to reaching similar heights. Overall, the game is fine, the shooting is fine, the setting is fine, it's all fine, but that also makes it unremarkable. And don't tell me I just didn't get it, alright? I've seen and done everything Village had to offer. I platinumed this thing on PS5, because the week it came out I was really, really bored. But even after all that time spent, I look back on Ethan's quest to overcome Chris's poor communication skills, and end up feeling almost nothing. Every year, there's usually one game everyone sings the praises of and showers with high review scores, only for me to play it myself and also fall in love with it. After seeing the admiration for it at the Game Awards, I felt like I had to play It Takes Two before I made my list, and I'm so glad I did. Not only does It Takes Two have endless charm to spare, but it makes the most of its required co-op. You're not just waiting for your partner to help you open a door. The game ensures both players have to work together pretty much all the time, usually by giving each player a unique ability that complements the other. What blew me away most of all was the sheer variety of locations, situations, and powers you encounter as you go. Every half hour or so, for the entire 10-hour playtime, you'll be seeing or doing something entirely unique, which makes progression constantly exciting. I also can't believe that only one of the two players has to own the game. My friend Dan was able to play this entire thing with me start to finish without having to spend a dime himself, and that is amazingly pro-consumer. What wonderful, kind, generous publisher is responsible for this? Huh. Let's all assume that fuck the Oscars guy is the real reason behind this and move on. It Takes Two is absolutely astounding, and if you have a friend or family member handy, you need to play it. Divorce has never been so fun.
Oops. I killed my wife.
Some things in life are practically handed to you on a silver platter, things so easy to hit out of the park that the mere idea of messing them up seems like an impossibility. But hot damn, Take-Two found a way. All they had to do was take the Grand Theft Auto trilogy on PS2, 3 classic games that hold a lot of nostalgic value, shine them up a little bit, and release them on modern systems. Easy goodwill and easier money. But instead, they took inferior mobile ports, fed them through an AI upscaler, and shipped them out the door without doing any quality assurance, and the results were hilarious and horrifying. Buggy, broken, unstable, and filled to the brim with problems both old and new, GTA The Trilogy Definitive Edition quickly won the award for Most Ironic Title this year, as all 3 of the included titles were unquestionably worse than what came out almost 20 years ago. And just to add insult to injury, Take-Two removed the classic versions from sale on all storefronts and started targeting modders with cease and desist letters, doing everything they could to ensure their sorry excuse for a remaster was the only way to play GTA 3, Vice City, and San Andreas. Technically, I can only include San Andreas on this list, because that was the only one of these trash fires I played firsthand. Thanks, Game Pass. But rest assured, this entire shitshow deserves to be here. These so-called definitive editions are a shining example of how publisher greed overrides everything else, and for ruining a collection of games I have extremely fond memories of. this Butcher trilogy was easily the most disappointing game of 2021. Sometimes you just play a game, have tons of fun with it, and are left with nothing but positive feelings, and when you think back on everything you've played over the year, those positive feelings resurface, and you can't help but declare it your #1 favorite. For me, this year, that game was Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. I have almost no experience with Ratchet & Clank. I missed out on all the PS2 classics. In fact, the only entry I played before this one was the movie tie-in, which was enjoyable but had little to no personality. Rift Apart, on the other hand, does everything right. It's a technical masterpiece showing off the power of the PS5, has great, colorful art direction, the story and characters are fun with some incredible set pieces, and your creative arsenal of destruction makes for fast, chaotic, debris and particle-filled combat encounters. I said before that I platinumed RE Village out of boredom, but I platinumed Rift Apart because I didn't want it to end. I struggled not to have a smile on my face for long stretches during my initial playthrough. Any complaints I have are nitpicks. The Spider-Bot levels are just kinda okay, and even though the game strongly encourages exploration, it feels the need to remind you where the critical path is every 30 seconds. That's a pet peeve of mine. But that's all my jaded ass can think of, and that should say a lot. This is my personal favorite game of 2021, and if you're lucky enough to have a PS5, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart is a must-play. So that's my list, or lists, I guess. And if that's all you were here for, then thanks for giving me your time, and please share your favorite and least favorite games of 2021 down in the comments below. Now, for the last couple years, at the end of these particular kinds of videos, I've gone over my channel's growth, seen how my content performed over the last year, but doing that this time around would only serve to make me very sad. So I figured that instead I would use my meager platform to shine a spotlight on others for a change. Like I'm sure many of you do, I watch a lot of content on the internet, most of which is gaming related. So I'd like to highlight some smaller channels that I stumbled upon and started watching in 2021, all of which will be linked in the description if you'd like to go over and show them some love yourself. Starting things off with the one and only Twitch streamer I watch, this is ArinAnimates. As much as I like to stream myself, I'm not really a big stream watcher. 99% of the time, I'll tune into a stream for like 10 minutes, get bored, and never come back. Arin, though, is the exception to that rule. She mostly focuses on playing survival horror type games. I stumbled upon her playing Silent Hill back in September, I think, and I immediately liked her. She has a genuine, adorable enthusiasm that just puts you in a good mood, even if her terrible puns threaten to ruin it sometimes. Arin quickly became one of my favorite people this year, and if you ever tune into her streams, there's a good chance you'll see me in her chat. Just don't make any pop culture or movie references while you're there. She will not get them.
Oh, yeah, that's a guy! What the fuck? What? That is not the kind of guy that was in here before. Please. Go through the door, Chris. Go through the door.
Jack Sather is a channel I learned about a couple weeks ago, funnily enough because he referenced my Halo multiplayer video within his own. However, there's a good chance if you've heard of him before this, it's because about a month ago, his breakdown of Red Dead Online, titled Red Dead Online is Ruined, went absolutely viral, and there's a good reason it did. I can't help but describe Jack's style as a more laid-back nakey jakey without the yoga ball. He'll wear game-appropriate attire to give critical analysis of something with frequent humor sprinkled in, and tie it all together with sleek editing. He's currently around 76,000 subscribers, and I wouldn't be surprised if by this time next year, the size of his channel completely dwarfs mine.
60 rounds of ammo, 40 cents. Okay, that makes sense. A new decent gun, $125. That's steep, but it's not terrible. How about a new ammo pouch to put your bullets in? That'll be $2,000. Are you out of your f***ing mind?
ProbablyJacob is smugness personified, but I don't mean that as an insult, I really don't. His dry narration style invokes this image of a guy perpetually pushing up his glasses with every sentence, but that also makes him stand out from other game review channels that tend to be either exaggerated or boring. His videos are nice and simple, just gameplay footage and voiceover with the occasional fade, but he's very matter-of-fact in his delivery, and is another creator not afraid to call it like he sees it, demonstrated in his unapologetic teardown of Silent Hill 4, the first video of his I watched. Go check him out.
How does Silent Hill 4 handle this level of absolute creative freedom? Well, if in the depths of your mind among your darkest fears sits normal-looking buildings, normal-looking subway stations, and a nice path through a normal forest, then damn, this hell dimension is for you.
I used to be an avid watcher of mainstream game reviews, IGN, Game Trailers, GameSpot, back when games journalism had credibility. The reviews of KIRK Collects remind me of that golden age. Despite his small channel size, KIRK's content shows a clear passion for the subject matter, with writing, narration, and editing giving off a professional air. He covers new stuff, old stuff, early access stuff, pretty much all the stuff, so if you want to see what good game reviews used to look like, he's your guy.
Infinite is notable for being the first in the series to be set in an open world. Another notable first for the series, its legendary multiplayer component going totally free to play. No Xbox Live or Game Pass required, but there are microtransactions. Shocker, I know.
Last but not least, we have someone whose previous channel I was a fan of, which focused on totally legit parody recaps of a certain colorful program. After an extended hiatus, though, he returned under the name Absolute Unit, and while his content has changed, his personality most certainly has not. He started out doing crudely animated rant-type videos before transitioning into long-winded anime reviews hosted by everyone's favorite hosted by everyone's favorite waifu, Tenkatsu Sinclair. I won't lie to you, his brand of dumb or crude humor is an acquired taste, but there's plenty of clever details to pick up on in his writing.
The notion that this bitch is a detective is fucking nonsense. The only thing she's detecting is which Dorito has the most seasoning on it.
Although personally, my favorite content of his are the times he drops the character to deliver something more serious, even poignant. Occasionally, he'll talk about a show or subject matter that truly speaks to him and end up delivering strangely meaningful commentary in between all the sex analogies. I can't guarantee Absolute Unit will be for you, but I like him, and maybe you will too.
You do not achieve understanding by screaming and shouting and demanding respect and picking apart everyone's language. You do it by fucking explaining shit to people. This anime girl is doing more for mental illness than any of you jackoffs on Twitter bitching about quote-unquote ableism.
As for me, that's going to be a wrap on 2021. I hope you enjoyed this video, all the other content I put out this year, streams, all that stuff. Thank you all for the continued support. I hope 2022 is even better for me and the channel and all of you, of course. And all that I really have left to say as I reflect on the last year of gaming is NFTs need to die.